Dr. Weslow introduced me to Brian a year and a half ago, I have been studying this problem, I always say, from about 30,000 feet for 20 plus years. And it seemed like in a sort of theoretical way, I was figuring out what the answer was. You know, if you figure out the incentives of the system and you figure out where they're wrong and how to restore the market, the answer kind of just emerges. And 10, 15 years ago, I had patients in my practice, and I knew some people that I thought might be interested in trying to make that happen. And I just didn't get any traction, and it might have been my inability to communicate or recruit people, but I think part of it was people just didn't hurt enough. And I think what we're seeing tonight is there are a lot of people, it's not just you, there's a lot of people everywhere that are hurting. And 10, 15 years ago, one of the barriers to making a solution was, how do you find doctors? Because doctors weren't going to leave the comfort and security of the status quo system, even as it was, you know, it's like as if it's a sinking ship, they're not going to want to jump into the sharks. So they'll cling to the ship. And a year and a half, and so I kind of let it, I figured, well, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in my career, I'll never see it. And then Weslow introduced me to Woodbridge, and he was telling me what he's actually doing. It's like he didn't waste time figuring it all out. He's just like doing it. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, how do you find physicians? No one can find, how do you find them? It's, what? That's easy. It's like it was a stupid question. Physicians are so ticked off now. They're so frustrated. They have just had it, you know. Oh, yeah, well, you know, don't forget, we get it going and coming. We're patients too. We have families that are patients too. So you work in it every day, and if that's not a big enough dose, you get it when someone in your family is sick. So I want to bring Brian Woodbridge, Dr. Woodbridge, up to talk, and go. Dr. Woodbridge.
Check. Here we go. All right. So, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dr. Weslow. I'm going to be the Cliff Notes version of what he said. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of set up what I'm doing at Customized Healthcare and how I got to this point. So as some of you know, I've worked for big healthcare for 23 years now or something. And I know big healthcare in and out and have become as frustrated by it as you have. You know, most of my career went in the hospital and, you know, some in the ICU, but I also, I think it's kind of a little bit, but also had 3 clinics going with my big healthcare systems, and that's when I really started to see the problem, because I'm an unusual doctor and that I have extensive inpatient and outpatient experience. That's nobody does it anymore. But it was when I really started to see the issue was when I became one of the quality directors for the large system. And that's when I really had my eyes opened at what was being defined in the healthcare system. And it wasn't anything to do with quality. It's like...
So just to be... So when you say that, this is basically the chickens letting the fox into the hen house, right? Yeah. You were at a hospital system,
yeah,
and they thought because you were coding so well, in other words, he was writing the diagnostic codes in well and getting a lot of money, more than other doctors, his physician peers. So they said, we got to bring this guy in and have him teach everybody how to do it that well. Where's our secret sauce? And they brought him in.
That was exactly right. So I started thinking about how I go about solving this problem, and I realized that I was going to have to learn about a whole lot of things that are not taught to doctors. And I realized I was going to have to learn a lot about insurance. I was going to have to learn about government regulations and all these kind of things. And I kind of just started to dive into it. And in the end, the result was customized healthcare services, which kind of takes on many of the issues that have been discussed earlier tonight. So my version is much shorter, a lot more pictures, a lot less words. But go ahead. So we started off the hijacking healthcare, how the doctor-patient relationship has been devoured by the machine. I spent all night drawing that machine. No, but anyways. So let's go ahead and next slide here, Sam. So I think, when most people think about healthcare, without realizing it, we have this sort of archetype in our head about what we think healthcare is. And I think it looks like this, right? The relationship of heart of healthcare, conversations, trust, understanding. It's a partnership. The one thing I didn't put up here, I should have put up there, is accountability. Because people are accountable when you have a person-to-person relationship. I feel accountable to that patient. I want to make sure I do a good job for them because I know that they're there to see me, and I want to do a good job for them. When the patient is accountable, they also, I tell people, I can't just fix you with pills. You got to do your part, right? This is a partnership. It's not, it's both of us working together to solve a problem. Okay. But as been pointed out several times tonight, this is what's really going on in that exam room. Yeah, you can kind of see, if you put your infrared goggles on in the room, and you watch your military videos, this is what's really going on there. You got your utilization review, you got your, claims processor, billers and coders, insurance analysts, government quality control. I put quality in quotes up there because that's exactly how I got onto this whole thing. As I said, this is nuts. This is not quality. This basically documenting for upcharging is what most of quality controls are these days. Not all of them. There are real quality measures, but believe me, they don't want you to know what they really are. Okay, and then they got the nice picture of the machine there, like that. That's nice home there. So, okay, Sam, go ahead. So how did those people get into that room in the first place? And Scott kind of touched on this a little bit. How was this machine that we're so frustrated with, how did it get born? Okay, and go ahead. The way it got started was by removing the most important relationship of all, and that is the direct exchange of payment between the provider of a service and the consumer of a service, okay? So when somebody pays someone directly, there's a bond there. It doesn't matter whether you're buying a steak or whether you're purchasing a plumber. It doesn't really matter. When you're paying someone for a service directly, you have a vested interest in that transaction. Okay, you have a vested interest in that transaction, and the person that's providing that service has a vested interest in that service. Okay? Healthcare is a valuable commodity. It's at its very core, healthcare is among those valuable commodities in all of commerce. I think it's 1/6 of the economy. By removing the payment obligation between the providers of a service and the consumers of that service, the patient no longer makes value-based decisions, i.e. decisions based upon quality and price. It doesn't matter what you do in life, when you have your own money and you're spending that money, you make a choice. It doesn't matter whether you're going to the tire store or whether you're going to Menards and buying a sink for your bathroom. You're making a choice with that money. When you go to Menards for that sink in your bathroom, you're saying, gosh, this sink is going in my laundry room. I don't really need the $400 copper-coated sink. I just need this white plastic one here. You are making that decision. No one is making that decision for you. You're making the value-based decision for yourself, okay? By replacing the act of paying for a valuable service with third-party payers, all of these entities were allowed into that room. That's how they got there, is because they are making the payment, not you, okay? All of those ghosts in the room are now extracting the value of the doctor-patient relationship onto themselves. And if there's one thing I want you to get across this evening from my part of this whole thing, it's that. all of these third parties, what they're doing is they're extracting the value of that doctor-patient relationship onto themselves. And not only they're doing that, but they're actually diminishing the people that are actually performing the service. They're actually getting treated worse and worse, but they keep extracting the relationship. They keep extracting the value in that relationship. Okay? So now you have hundreds of entities that have aggregated into this insatiable creature that survives off the doctor-patient relationship. It really is a parasitic relationship. They get all the value, and it's not a symbiotic relationship. They're getting the value, and it's at the expense of the doctor-patient relationship. Okay? All right, so payer versus insurance. This is important to understand. Since the 1970s, multiple competing forces have made health insurance look more and more like a payer and less like insurance, okay? As a comparison, auto insurance is affordable for two main reasons. Actuaries can assess the risk of the customer, and market forces determine the price of the work and the maintenance that goes into your vehicle. You don't, in auto insurance, you don't file claims to do an oil change. You don't file an auto claim when you need to change the headlight. You don't file a claim for any of these common things you do with your car. That way you're spending your money on these things, and they remain affordable because you've got 15 million auto shops out there and places to buy a headlamp and places to get your oil changed. So it maintains a market economy that keeps prices down, okay? You are only using auto insurance for the major problems and accidents. But healthcare is now functioning under a payer system, not insurance. Everything is put on that insurance card. That is why all those people are in the room. If there are no third-party payers, there's no ghost in that room. Okay? So when the consumer of healthcare no longer pays the provider for their healthcare and a third-party payer system was installed, the machine was born. Okay? It's like, oh! All right. So lots of funny stuff in there, but the only thing I like on there is that built by incentives, fueled by complexity, and feeds on relationships. That's the one I like the best on here. But like I said, I spent all night painting that with oil paints. See, oil paints. Okay, go ahead. And all those machine parts sorted it out amongst themselves. So when insurance started turning into a payer in the 70s, what happened was all these different third parties that were involved they became to sort of organize themselves into like this thing. And Dr. Westlow did make a good point about this. So go ahead. So you can see in the machine headquarters, you kind of got on the right side and the left side there, and this is exactly right. You've got hospital systems they're sort of, working with surgical specialists, medical specialists, therapists. Those are all the people that benefit by the hospitals doing better, and vice versa. And then on the left side, you got the insurance payers, the government regulators, the TPAs, the pharmacy benefit managers. Those are all the people that are kind of rooting for the insurance payers, because so for a long time, these two things within the machine kind of worked a little bit against each other. They at least negotiated over a game of pool, and they sort of kept prices in check a little bit, because insurance companies said, well, I'm not going to pay you that much for an MRI, and the hospital system, well, okay, well, we'll just raise it $100, and we'll be good with it. We're all making money here, but there was a little bit of a pressure back and forth to keep prices from skyrocketing. Okay. And that was how the game was played every year, and the two factions within the machine adhering to a truce for a while. But the machine was learning, it was extracting, it was positioning. And then around 2009, something strange happened. So all of a sudden, everyone's just like, getting along here, insurance payers, hospital system. And this is exactly what Dr. Westlow was saying in his presentation, is that now, because of the way the ACA structured things, there's no longer two people on the opposite side of a negotiating table. They're all on the same side of the negotiating table. They're all working together. Because there is now no longer any restraint on raising prices, because you've kind of got this hospital system, you've got 100 entities behind it, and every single one of those entities walking behind the hospital system, the more they raise the prices, the more everybody makes behind them. It's just like, it's like I said, it's like just throwing money behind them, and everybody just keeps grabbing it. There's literally no disincentive to raising prices. That there's no market forces in place anymore. So go ahead. So the ACA, with its myriad new regulations and price controls, opened the door to new incentives, new alignments, and new problems. The last remaining barrier to rising healthcare costs was removed, and we all paid the price: families, employers, and providers. Insurance payers were now positioned to benefit rather than be harmed by raising hospital prices. All of the downstream providers and services benefited from rising prices. But the demand for primary care physicians to produce and to refer and document overwhelmed the system, dramatically reducing access for patients. So go ahead. So this is the part that involves me now. This is kind of why I'm here tonight. So the primary care story is how the most fundamental relationship in healthcare was devalued for the practitioners, yet the source of untold wealth for the industry. Okay. The decline fall of primary care, what I pointed out here, this we don't need to go too much into this, but the idea is that when primary care services were no longer paid for by the patient, the primary care provider gradually became an employee of the early machine variations. Back in the 60s and 70s, the vast majority of primary cares were independent, but as the machine grew, the hospital systems wanted guaranteed referrals. Not referrals based on quality or price. They just wanted guaranteed referrals. They wanted it within their own basket. So the hospital systems began purchasing primary care practices, as Dr. Westlow pointed out. Also, again, this is kind of going off more than we need to know here tonight, but laws were passed under the guise of consumer protection that certainly did protect hospital systems, but had a tremendous detrimental effect on independent primary care. And over time, it just became much safer and easier to become an employed physician. Doctors were simply protecting themselves from litigation, which, again, we're not going to get into why. As time went by, young physicians, this is a big one, young physicians in the medical schools lost any mentors or any guidance on how to be the owner of their own practice or how to practice independently. This is a huge problem. You know, medical doctors coming out, all these young physicians are coming out, they don't even know how to open a clinic. They don't even, there's no one they know that has even done it. Plus, they're coming out with $400,000 med school bills that are unpayable if they go out into practice on their own. So the whole thing is just rigged now, where you can't be anything but an employed physician. Go ahead, Sam. These are just some statistics, basically just going over what I just told you. In 1983, about 76% of physicians were still self-employed. Today, depending on the measure, only about 42 are in private practice. That's actually higher than what we're talking about. And roughly 3/4 are employed by hospitals, health system, or corporate entities. But that number includes all specialty. That does not include, that's not just primary care. And the latest numbers that just came out in January 1 of this year, 82% of physicians are now employed by hospitals or corporate entities. 82%. We're under 20% now are independent. Okay. All right, go ahead. The end result of the machine takeover of primary care is a generation of primary care physicians that have no training or memory of how to run a clinic or function independently. Modern EHRs make it very difficult to practice independently. Boy, do I know that. Employed primary care physicians receive minimal RVU credit. That's more than what we need for tonight. Sam, go on to the next one here. So is it game over? And this is the point of tonight, and we're going to kind of get to the questions here. Is it game over? All value has now been extracted from the doctor-patient relationship, generating massive wealth for the healthcare industry. The primary care doctor in that relationship has been trained and financially devalued to accept what the machine gives them. Okay? Good. So the answer is no. There is a solution. Okay? And this is why I'm here. So direct primary care, The object behind it is to get all of those ghosts out of the room. It's to get all the third parties out of the room where we can go back to practicing healthcare in a conscientious way, and we get rid of all those people that have got their fingers in the pie, okay? There are already over 110 direct primary care clinics in Wisconsin, and it grows by another 10, 15 every year. Now, a lot of those direct primary care clinics, some of them are being started by people that are extremely dissatisfied and with their experience in big healthcare. Some of them are, sometimes the reasons for starting the direct primary care are kind of out there. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of quality variation in the direct primary care movement just because it's new. It's like the Wild West out there. You don't quite know what you're getting. So if you do look at a direct primary care clinic, make sure you do your research, that there are people that, that have good experience, that know what they're doing, they're board certified and all that kind of stuff. Employers are beginning to recognize they have the power to fight back against the hospital systems, but because of hazy knowledge of how the game is played, they don't quite know where to begin. Well, that's why I'm here, to help employers play the game. I give them 4 aces now that they can play. Price transparency laws are beginning to take hold, but are being fought fiercely by the machine. They do not want you to know what they're charging, okay? So my company is Customized Healthcare Services. The story is, like I said, I started this out not to become a direct primary care clinic per se. What I wanted to do was apply the direct primary principles to large groups of people and employers to help them fight this machine. Because one of the things that Dr. Westlow said, and is at the very end of his speech there, he was talking about the echocardiogram. And I wanted him to give the punchline, and the punchline is that echocardiogram charge was $4,500, and people think they have to have the insurance so that they can get that $4,500 down to the $800, which is what their copay was. The copay was. What I wanted to say is that what the employee doesn't understand is that their employer was getting stuck with the other $3,000. Okay, $3,000 that was completely not even necessary. The price of the procedure is really $800. So the employers are the ones that are really getting stuck with the tab for all this nonsense. Okay, they're the ones that are really, really getting just screwed over by this system, and they can't take it anymore. Every year their broker comes to them, Tom Madden will tell you this, and they say, gosh, you're going up another 15%, you're going up another 20%. I just landed another account today from a company that was told they were going to go up another 22%, and they said, we're out. And they called me up, and we're starting up July 1. So,
Brian,
there we go.
let's get the panel up here. Thank you.